introduce you, okay?
Okay.
Okay, that's us live. Well, good morning, Mr. Hoddinott, all the way from Sydney.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Bright and sunny over there, I see.
It's very bright and sunny over there. I see too when I check my security cameras on my phone.
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm not. So
Yeah.
I'm still just down the road from you, Mr. Capaldi.
Yes. Yeah.
Down in Englandshire.
Englandshire, yes.
That's right. But I will be back in Aussie Shire at the end after the weekend. I'm going home on the weekend.
Yeah. Well, we up here in Scotland, of course, we are suffering severe flooding from England crying over the World Cup.
That's right. Yeah. It's been a lot of rain here this weekend, but it's just gone.
Did you see that Laurel Hardy clip I sent you?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
I'll send it you. That's quite funny. But,
okay.
But anyway, enough about England's misfortunes, and congratulations, of course, to South Africa. In a way, I was quite pleased that they won because their number 6, the captain is from the black community, and he's an iconic figure, and it's going to do a world of good for South Africa, and help to bring a bit more equality there. So anyway, it's every cloud has its silver lining. England can move on. Scotland is absolutely loving the fact that England lost.
So is Wales.
Yes,
Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and I mean, I watched little bits of the game, and it was just attritional. South Africa, they just chose a really, really big pack, and it was just set scrum after line out after set scrum after line out. It was pretty boring. Yeah, so anyway,
unfortunately, I didn't get to see the game. I was on flight between Bucharest and London. And
you were spared.
But I did watch the game the week before between England and New Zealand. I was pretty impressed with England.
That was an exciting game. Yeah,
it was they played extremely well, and I was surprised to learn that not only did South Africa beat them, but they beat them in the end so well. But good on them. It's a game in the end. It's a game. What that win would do to the South African population, and particularly the African population of South Africa, would be wonderful for them. So that's great. Yeah.
The other interesting statistic is the fact that only once, when a team has beaten New Zealand in order to prevent them from going through to the final, have that team actually won. It's happened 4 times now. This will be the 5th time that New Zealand have been beaten either, I think every time it's been in the semi-finals, but the team that's actually beat them has ended up not winning the World Cup. And you would thought that having beaten the best team in the world, that you then are the best team in the world. But as you say, it's just a game. It's just on the moment, And to be honest, South Africa, I think they got a lead, which they England were always having to try and catch up on, and just never did. And eventually they ran in a couple of tries, which really sealed the deal, But
it's fascinating. You're right, though. I remember in 2003, Australia beat New Zealand to get into the final against England, and you guys beat us, or not you, but England beat us in the final. So
and then in 2007 or 11, I think it was 7 when France beat New Zealand in the semi-final, and that must have been 2011 when France beat, because the 2007 final was South Africa versus England, when South Africa won that one again, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
And then it's 2011 that was played. England and Wales covered it, and again it was France that knocked New Zealand out, but didn't go on to win the title. I think Australia must have won it that year.
I don't know.
They've won it. I think they've won it 3 times, haven't they?
Who is that?
Well, I think
Australia or
South Africa. South Africa have won it 3 times, and now New Zealand, I'm sure, have won it 3 times. And I thought maybe Australia had.
Yeah, I think we have won it 3 times, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
moving swiftly on, because I know that time is of the essence, and I really wanted to ask you about, because some people will not be aware of it because they're not on the Facebook group, but you've been doing a series of posts about facts that you really should know. And I was going to ask you if you might share some of them with us.
Yeah, okay. Well,
not all 15 necessarily, but
no, that'd take way too long.
sure.
So let me just explain the background.
Yeah.
Because people are coming to the story and the concern for justice in Stephen and Brendan and Teresa's case, that there are different levels of knowledge. Some people who have followed this for 3 years or 4 years, and others 3 months or 3 weeks.
Exactly.
So I think it's important to revisit some of the basic issues that are important, that gives that builds the foundation behind our dismay about what's happened here. And so I introduced, they weren't new things, but introduced little tidbits of factual matters that people tend to forget, and it's important to relay them to the wider audience for them to contemplate what that might mean in terms of the case overall. So I'll mention a few of them, and maybe we can flesh them out a little bit.
Please, yeah.
So these aren't in the order that I listed them, but I'll mention them anyway. So one of the things that I mentioned was the fact that in Brendan's case and in Stephen's case, the narrative as to when and how Teresa was murdered was totally different. So we have a trial starting in February 2007, where the narrative from Mr. Kratz and Mr. Fallon and Mr. Garn was that that Teresa was shot in Stephen's garage.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, from there, loaded into her car and then dragged out behind his garage, which is ridiculous and implausible that you would do that. If that was in fact true at all, you would just take her outside to behind the garage. You don't need to put her in a car to get her to behind the garage. But in the case of Brendan, so the narrative there was that she was murdered by gunshot in the garage, and in Brenda's case that she was murdered in the house in Stephen's trailer, with a throat being cut and so on. So the point there in a short publication, be it on Twitter or Facebook, was really, so she got murdered twice, did she? Yeah. Is my question. And how, in particular, Judge Fox, because Brendan's trial followed Stephen's, how Judge Fox would allow that proposition to be put forward in a trial that was linked and so close to each other is beyond belief. And so that was the point of that particular observation.
Yep, absolutely. I was going to ask what why do you think there were so many interviews of Brendan Dassey? I get the sense that it was in effect that they kept telling him, we know what happened, we just need it from you. And it was like they were trying to coach him, train him into what to say and to get to somewhere whereby he could remember that story so that he could then be used at Steve's trial. But of course he could never bless him, he could never get to the stage where he could actually say the same thing over and over and over again. Is that how you?
Absolutely. And it goes to this basic proposition: the easiest thing to remember consistently is the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And when you go back to Brendan's, not his sort of arrest interviews, if I can call them those, or the surrounding those in February, March of 2006, in his interviews right from the beginning in November of 2005, Brendan was absolutely consistent and reliable in everything that he would say about what happened on, the afternoon and evening of October 31st, 2005. And the way he was, and accepting Brendan had limited processing abilities, why he was consistent was because he was telling the truth. The reason why they found it hard to get a consistent story out of Brendan in those subsequent interviews was because they were being made up. He was trying to, if you like, deal with a double dilemma: his own knowledge of the truth and his concern that he wasn't being believed, and that he was trying to appease or please the investigators because they made him feel like that's what he should say, and if he said what they wanted him to say, that everything would be okay. And they needed those multiple interviews to keep feeding him facts that they were contemplating or creating to support their case, issues about going under the hood, because they needed him to say that, because that's where they had planted DNA for Stephen. They wanted a circumstance where they could say, well, Brendan said you went under the hood, that sort of thing. So, I mean, and, the worst part about all of that, as everyone knows, is how Brendan was allowed to be interviewed with no lawyer present or no responsible advocate present is just unbelievable. And how, again, Judge Fox allowed those so-called confessions to be brought into evidence is just outrageous.
Well, yeah, that was kind of explained to me, because I did ask Jerry Buting about this, about I couldn't believe how the judges were in this case, that they just bent over backwards to acquiesce to everything that the state wanted, what Ken Kratz wanted, and I suggested, that there seemed to be almost as if the judges were subordinate to the prosecutors at times. And he said, it's you know what it is? It's quite simply the fact that they wanted re-election.
Yeah, of course. That's right.
All it was, just thinking of themselves. They had no worries at all about what would happen to Stephen Brendan. It just beggars belief. What I was going to ask though was, because you'll know this better than me, being an MAM mastermind along with Eric Ozay.
Right.
Was it which judge was it in the Seventh Circuit, and was it the majority in the first hearing, or was it the dissenting judges in the second, in the en banc hearing, that pointed out that the state, if they took little bits of Brendan's confession, they knitted it together to make a story.
Yes.
When you take it as a whole, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and that's really what they had done. The state had taken these little bits that he'd said from multiple interviews, stitched them together, and you get a story. I can't remember which one it was. Can you remember?
I don't know. Well, there was Judge Woods and Judge.
It was Woods, Williams, and Rovner, wasn't it? Were the three in the en banc versus. Yeah. The majority in the en banc were Hamilton, Sykes,
Easterbrook.
Yeah. Who never said a word.
I know. But Brendan's story is simply, it's a fairy tale.
Yes.
It's basically a fairy tale achieved out of abusing a young man without any normal habeas representation for him. And it's an absolute disgrace and embarrassing in terms of the way the criminal justice system in any country, let alone the USA, should operate. And if you want to know what truthfully happened from Brendan's side, just listen to his first interview in Crivets in I think in November 7 or something like that. He was interviewed, and all the other stuff is just made up. It's all made up, and it's so the point about raising this issue of the two venues, if I can call it that, or the two narratives, and how Teresa died, was to illustrate the complicit nature of the judicial system to allow such contradictory matters of fact continue in Brendan's trial. Brendan's trial should have been thrown out straight away, because it had already been proven that, at least allegedly been proven, that Teresa had died in Stephen's garage, not in the house, or been killed, I should say. So
yeah, the thing here that, as you know, probably annoys me more than anything is what on earth are the journalists doing in all of this? You know, why are they simply acting as a mouthpiece for the state's propaganda? Again,
Well,
are they feared in the same way that the judges are? You know, they're feared to tell the public exactly what the truth is, and therefore we'll just go along with the state's lies.
there's no, in my mind, both in terms of analysing these cases and observing what's gone on in the more recent years about these cases, and in some personal things that I've had personally been involved with in Wisconsin, there is no doubt at all in my mind that there are those that are on the inside of the process and those on the outside of the process. And you know, journalism is supposed to be about independence and freedom of speech and so on. I have never yet seen in any of the latter matters pertaining to Stephen and Brendan's cases any really ongoing critical analysis of law enforcement and the judicial system by journalists from Wisconsin. Certainly been some from outside, but from Wisconsin, and particularly from, you know, the area around Manitowoc and Calumet and Green Bay. It's like, oh, no, we can't say anything bad about anyone. It's just, you know, they may not give us their advertising business, right? They might cut us off, right? So, which is what the media is all about, advertising, right? To make revenue. And so it's, you know, they don't want to jeopardize those relationships.
So geographically, are we talking about what's often referred to as Fox Valley?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. All that, or Fox Valley is all that area includes across. I think I'm right in saying this. It includes across to Appleton and Neenah and Oshkosh and like Winnebago County and so there's Winnebago, Calumet, and Manitowoc, and above that is Brown County, and anyway, it's all in that area.
So how far would it be from Appleton to Chilton?
Not far, actually. In terms of mileage, it's probably, I'm going to say about 20 miles, 25 miles maybe.
That would make sense, because certainly Ken Kratz, although he was the prosecutor for Calumet County, he actually lived in Appleton at the time.
Yeah.
That's where his wonderful house was.
Jerry Buting and Dean Strang, when they were, you know, actually on the case,
they did, and
they stayed in Appleton as well.
Yes, yeah.
So it's just sort of, because Chilton's a nice area, but it's very rural and very it's not a sophisticated area. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. It's quite a very beautiful area, to be honest. But they probably wanted to be a bit away from that space, a bit of privacy and a bit of independence there.
No, I realised that obviously asking you the geography questions, you know, Irakoze, the expert, isn't around to answer these questions, so I do apologise for putting you on the spot.
I know. Well, I do actually. I just have down here a little hotline to Irakoze, just in case I'm not sure, right? I'll just ask him, you know, north, south, east, west.
It's his explanation for, you know, how can you leave Sydney at 9 o'clock on the Monday morning and arrive in LA 14 hours later, and it may only be 6:30 in the morning?
That's just cruel. It's just being cruel, you know.
Oh dear.
So I'll mention another one of my
please do.
15 items.
Hi Rhonda, hi Ben. To the people that are joined.
The other one of the more famous ones, which everyone knows about, is when Tom Fallon got up at the closing of Brendan's trial and made that famous statement, "Innocent people don't confess."
Oh yes.
Which is a straight lie.
Yeah.
Because he knows that's not true, and the statistics are very clear. Adult sort of exonerations when people gave a confession 25 actually gave a false confession.
Yes.
So just, and then when you break that down to juveniles and those with limited intellectual capacity, 80% of those people who gave confessions gave false confessions. In fact, and so in Brandon's more common to give confessions than it's not. So for Tom Fallon to get up there and say innocent people don't confess is a straight lie. And he knew that. You could, by his body language, he knew that. Would have known that just by his experience. And they're unforgivable statements in my mind. I just, they're supposed to be about discovering the truth. They're supposed to be about telling the jury factual matters, not telling them truthful matters. And these are all part of the things that influence the jurors' contemplation.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, the thing is, of course, that Brendan is constantly being given a choice of the lesser of two evils. You can either say that you did it and you're sorry for it, or you did it and you're not sorry for it. And it's that kind of constantly badgering him. Telling him, well, you did it, but it's just a case of how lenient you want to, or how much mitigating circumstances you want to present for yourself. But as you say, Fallon should obviously, he's the Assistant Attorney General. He knows that these wrongful coerced confessions exist, but it's just a soundbite, isn't it? It's just a soundbite for the court, for the jury, for the journalists that are there. I mean, you get to the. Are you okay?
Hey, Paul, can I?
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
I don't know whether it's on my end or your end, but I'm hearing what you're saying, but it sort of broke. Is my voice coming through to you clearly?
It's occasional, just little bits are missing, and also the pictures just occasionally.
Yeah.
It must, but at other times it's fine. I think it's just the sound and the video trying to keep up, as it were. So I think we've lost Mark, unless he's maybe going to switch off and try and come back in again. So we'll hold on for a couple of minutes and see if he's going to try the link again, okay? And see if we can get him back on to talk about some of the other aspects that he's. I think most of us here are on the various Facebook groups and know the series of things that he's been looking at. So I don't think that's a problem. Okie dokie. I better say cheerio, because that's the postman knocking on the door, I believe. Okay, we're going to just stop it there then and maybe catch him up with him another time. Bye for now.